which you will get at the very beginning. It's as early as the age of 3. Your child goes through the system, whatever ISD, and I know Round Rock, LISD, Austin ISD, all of these ISDs have pretty good programs where you can get your child tested, and it's all free, obviously, and they can start getting services, ESLE, which is the earliest group for lower functioning kids versus your ELE programs that are out there. And then there's support all the way up until the age of 21. You have support systems that are put in there that will help your child, whether it be pulling out, and, alhamdulillah, there's a lot of opportunities to be able to go into the school and have a pretty personalized program done for your child. And then I wanted to talk about social media because a lot of us are very much on social media. And so some of the very good sites that we like to follow are Autism Society of Texas, and then Autism Speaks, and Austin Special Needs Parents Facebook page. And I really particularly like the last one. The reason is because it's a very local Austin page, and you can really ask anything. There are people that just come on there to vent, and sometimes that's all parents sometimes need is a support system. And being able to have that, where you can talk freely without a space, without being judged. My child did A, B, and C, and it was very embarrassing for me. And not be able to come back with, oh, but you should, do this. Instead, it's a lot of compassion and maybe sometimes suggestions on, similar stories or advice. So I have this short little video that I wanted to show, and especially I think this is a very good one for kids I think it's just a very good explanation with simple terms, especially for the kiddos. So I'm going to go ahead and play. Let me see.
We are all different, and that's wonderful. Some differences are easy to see. Height, hairstyle, gender, eye color, and so on. Other differences can't be seen. Our favorite foods, fears, or special skills. Interestingly, the way we see the world is also different. For instance, what do you see in this drawing? Most people see a duck, but some of you might have seen a rabbit. Whichever you saw, you are correct. This is just a trick drawing to show you that all brains work differently. The brain is your body's computer. It works differently for all of us and controls how you learn. That's why we are all good at different things. How you feel, which is why we all feel different emotions. And how you communicate. Sometimes the brain is connected in such a way it affects the senses and how we perceive and read situations and interactions. This is known as autism. Many people have autism, so it's likely you already know someone who is autistic. And for this reason, it's useful to know a little bit about autism. The special wiring inside an autistic brain can sometimes make the person good at tasks we may find difficult, such as mathematics, drawing, or music. It can also do the opposite, and activities we find too easy are incredibly difficult to them, such as making friends. The senses constantly send information to your brain about your surroundings and other people. However, when a person's brain and its senses don't communicate well, the brain can become overwhelmed and confused, affecting how they see the world. Picture yourself walking down the street. This is how an autistic brain may experience the same world. Scary, isn't it? Sadly, in many cases, the person can't say out loud how they feel, So even though there's chaos going on in their heads, they seem okay on the outside, unable to ask for help. We will develop behaviors to help us feel calm in uncomfortable situations. We may look away, hug ourselves, chew our fingernails, fidget, bite our lips, and so on. Equally, autistic people develop behaviors that help them cope with these intense moments. These actions may seem unusual, but they're just their way to feel calm. When they happen, it means they are having a hard time. The kind thing to do is not to give them an even harder time by getting cross, ignoring them, or mocking them. People with autism need friends who are willing to take the time to know them. With good communication and plenty of patience, everyone would be better off. People with autism are not ill or broken. They simply have a unique view of the world. And with a little support from their friends, they might just be able to share that view with us. Autism can make amazing things happen.
Okay, so I really love that video. I think it's a very good and simple understanding of what autism is. I think that's even sometimes as a parent, it's a good reminder, just being able to understand that what a child or a person with autism is going through. Sometimes we do get cross and we do get upset and just stop being annoying or stop doing this and, behave. And really, they're just struggling to kind of keep it all together without being able to tell us what's happening. Which brings me to the next slide, which is, misconceptions about autism. I get this all the time, and I think some of my fellow parents who have family members or children of autism might be able to relate. Some of the comments or questions. Autism, first off, is not a disease. Autistic people are not ill, which means there's no cure for it. There's no need to be cured. They are just different. It's just a different way of processing the world. Another thing that we constantly hear, he or she doesn't look autistic. Well, there's not really a look to autism. There are cases where there's an enlarged forehead or certain bone structure or teeth that may categorize, but that is not the norm. Again, because it's a spectrum, it's very hard to detect. And so there's no physical attributes necessarily attached to autism. Vaccines cause autism. A study was done on autism in 1998 that related taking vaccines and our essential vaccines, such as MMR, or whatever the cases are, and they linked it to autism. Well, first thing is first. I would rather have a living child than a non-living child if I had to pick between a vaccine and autism. I think that having, and they were able to retract this study because there was no actual link. And so there was a study that came back and they said the exact opposite, that there is no link between vaccines and autism. In fact, one of the earliest cases of autism in the US was back in 1908. And that was the first known when they were starting to understand and gather information. And it wasn't until 1943 that there was an actual study done where they took 11 individuals and were able to study them and find similar traits amongst them. And they started linking it and calling it words. And it wasn't until 1944 where Asperger's was actually detected, which is the highest or higher form of autism. And some of our notable president, Thomas Jefferson of the United States, was, in today's world, would be considered autistic. And as well as Bill Gates and Einstein. All of these notable inventors and people in history have been known to have autism. And it wasn't just around back in the day. So even prior to vaccines, Michelangelo and Emily Dickinson. These are some of the notable people in history that have been known to have what is today, present day, known as autism. People with autism don't have emotion, and that's not true. Some people think that autism means that the person cannot feel all emotions. And yes, it is hard for them to display their emotions, but that doesn't mean that they don't get their feelings hurt. And so when a friend is, not feeling great, they're still not going to feel great. They might not be able to express to you that I'm having this day and whatever is happening in my life, but they'll just be able to, they'll take it out in different ways. What else? So, and then people, and also there's a misconception. Oh, so-and-so is autistic. They have no desire to be friends. And that's not true. I think it takes, again, people with autism, it's just, they have a different gift. There's a different way of reaching out and getting them to be more open. And I'll get to that. Some can grow out of autism. And that's going back to the first one. One can't grow out of autism because it's a lifelong disorder and there's no cure. Often we get to hear, oh, it's okay, you're doing great, and one day, if Allah wills, they're going to cure. But it's not a disease. It's not an illness. And I think that is the most important takeaway from tonight, is to understand that autism is just a different way of processing information, and that it is not something that we need to fix. It's not like cancer, or it's not, something that, and it should be spoken amongst our community more often as if it's just part of, life, and not something that's still very taboo. Awareness versus acceptance. Okay, so awareness means that you know that autism exists. We have so-and-so, with the numbers being so high as they are, there's a chance that you do know what autism is. But acceptance means that you try to connect personally and learn more. So, alhamdulillah, we have a wonderful community here. And so it's last Ramadan, I had the opportunity of being part of an organization at ICBC, which I'll get into a little bit later. But we had quite a few people with different abilities that were upstairs in the ladies' area. And I had the opportunity of meeting a lot of them, and which kind of got us to get this whole program going of wanting to talk about autism and Down syndrome and just being able to address these things, because it is knowing that you have family or fellow community members that do have different abilities. Awareness means you can identify it. Acceptance means you can talk to people and gain understanding and compassion and sensitivity. So being able to go out and say, oh, sitting in a casual setting and just talking, and versus, hey, how's it going? I have, my so-and-so, my significant other, or my child, or whoever has autism, and this is what we struggle through. And one option is, oh, okay, yeah, what's for dinner? Or it's, hey, I'd like to understand more, or how can we help? And then awareness means something is happening. And this often happens in supermarkets. Every so often, or at the masjid even, every so often you'll have, a meltdown. We've had these meltdowns, these wonderful meltdowns in the middle of the store. And, and honestly, before having known autism and what I know now, I used to be that judgy one, going like, oh my God, that kid is so spoiled. And now, I think you start looking at the world in a different perspective. The more you understand that there are kids that are probably having a meltdown because it's too noisy and it's too crowded and the lights are too bright and the sounds of the microphone are too loud. And that's when you understand and learn to have compassion and to try to see what that child or person is going through. Awareness means you cope with and deal with and tolerate it. Acceptance means you embrace it and grow from it. And alhamdulillah, those who have family members and children, I would hope to say like we've grown. Have a better understanding and be able to see the world from a different perspective, a perspective that I didn't have before. Awareness is not enough. This is just the gate, but acceptance is what we're trying to fight for and look for, is to be able to come in and not feel like, oh, what is so-and-so going to say or do because, my child has autism or my spouse has autism. How are they going to get married? It should never come down to this. It should be that, okay, it is part of our society and it shouldn't be so much of a taboo anymore. So, and this is for a lot of the kids in here. How can you help, right? You have friends in school, and you, I'm sure, have, classmates sometimes. A friend is being repetitive. We're going to talk about this. So say, you're sitting in class or you're at snack time, and a friend is being repetitive, fixated on the topic. They're constantly talking about cars. They love cars. And every time you talk to them, they want to talk about cars. What do? You can answer. Okay, well, I personally would, if I were in a class with some friends who were just talking about cars, I would, try to divert, maybe try to change the topic, like, hey, and not in a mean way. I mean, obviously you can be like, I'm so tired of you always talking about cars. That's so annoying. Or you can say, hey, I love cars too, but I saw this really cool train over there. I think we should go check it out, right? That would be a nice way to kind of divert the attention. Instead of, and that's sometimes we see that often in school. We see a lot of kids sometimes get very fixated. I had a boy who was very much in love with the Titanic and the tragedy of the Titanic. So every time I saw him, guess what? Did you know how many people, and I had heard the fact like 1,000 times, and I can't even remember it now, but how many people died on the Titanic? And every time, and I still see him in the hall, and he'll see me, hey, guess what? And I'm like, the Titanic. And so he'll tell me every time, and he knows every fact about it, how many compartments were there in the bottom, and how many filled up with water, and all of it. And every time, I try, hey, how's it going? How was school today? So just being able to change the topic without hurting their feelings. If you see someone struggling and overwhelmed, how can you help? Sometimes we'll go to settings and you see a friend crying. They are crying uncontrollably, and they don't understand. You're just looking at them like, why? Why are they crying always? Every time you see them, they're super emotional. And so how would you deal with that? One way you could do is just give them space. You can say, hey, I understand, you're going through something hard right now. I feel like, your emotions you're just not happy right now. But I'm here. I'm standing over there. If you need help, you can let me know. And sometimes it's just sitting next to them, letting them just, cry it out or have their moment. There's a little girl that I get to go see sometimes at school, and she and I met last year. I used to volunteer at the elementary school, and nobody was talking to her. And so one day we started talking, and she's very much into dinosaurs. And so we started talking, but every day this girl would cry. So I would go sit next to her in the cafeteria, wait for her to be done, and I'll just tell her, hey, I'm here. Whenever you feel like you're ready to talk, we can talk. And so she'll tell me, well, my feelings got hurt because of so-and-so, or my teacher doesn't understand, this is why I can't read. Or she'll tell me something about her day that, and I might not have the answer, but I'll tell her, hey, I understand that you're not feeling great right now, but I know it's going to make you happy. And it might be those topics that they love to talk about over and over again. But if it helps at that moment, why not? Being a friend. Sometimes that's all we need. We just need a friend. And that's just all of us. But sometimes, you're at the playground and you'll see a bunch of girls or boys just hanging out together, and you see this one kid that's just kicking rocks. And so just, it's nice to be able to go and say, hey, you want to go kick rocks together, or do you want to come and join us and play? Giving extra time to process, to get a task done. And this applies in work, and it applies in school, and it applies everywhere. We try to get things done, and society is just on a race. I mean, that's just how we are. And sometimes we just need to take a break and let our friends catch up to us. I see, and this is, why can't you finish this task in a timely manner? Well, in school, for example, we have IEPs that are set up to allow accommodations in the classroom. And so, for example, a test. A person who is, on the spectrum might need a couple of hours or a couple of days, to finish the same test someone can finish in one 50-minute class. So being able to have those accommodations and knowing that you have those accommodations available to you is key. And as well as just sometimes riding a bike. Well, all of us can ride a bike, but that person can't ride a bike. Well, because they might need a little bit of help. And so, I see in our neighborhood, we had a couple of kids, and they all know how to ride bikes without training wheels. And sure enough, we have one who doesn't. She won't get off her training wheels, but she also doesn't want to ride her bike because she doesn't want to be the only one on the training wheels. Well, we have the entire cul-de-sac of kids come and ride bikes with them on training wheels, even though they all know how to ride bikes without them. But that's the wonder of kids and being able to be so accepting, and just giving them that extra oomph, help when they need it. Being patient and understanding. That's the main thing, is being able to understand that sometimes you'll come in and you won't know what kind of mood your friend will be in. A person with autism sometimes might have, in the next instance, they're having a great time, and a few minutes later they're upset. But just being able to just give them space and be there, knowing that, hey, I'm here, I'm your friend. That's really all, a person with autism wants. So we have, ICBC launched a peer-to-peer support group for special needs children and parents. It's called CHAMP. We were Muslim certified, I believe 2 years ago, if I'm not mistaken. It is a support group for parents and caregivers at the masjid. And we meet, I'd like to say, we used to meet quite often. We'd have family events at the masjid where, we would go out and have a picnic or whatever. At the All Abilities Park, we've had a picnic before. We've had a fall festival where kids brought various toys and whatever, and we're just able to play. And parents and caregivers are able to get to know each other. So we have that, and then during Ramadan, as I was telling you guys earlier, we have a program where a room set up upstairs, and that has the accommodations. So, the beauty of it is you'll see people that are, 18 and a male and upstairs, and it's mashallah, it's amazing to be able to have that, and knowing that people are very accepting. And I, personally got to witness that room all Ramadan, and just having the sheer understanding. So, it's wonderful to have that organization or a support group here at ICBC. ICBC is also Muslim certified. It is the first masjid in Austin to be Muslim certified, followed by ICGA. Muslim provides a wide range of programs and services across North America to improve experiences within mosques. So before ICBC and ICGA were certified by Muslim, we had a list of things that had to be done. Which, alhamdulillah, a lot of the sisters have worked very hard, the brothers and sisters here, well before, we came along, and have, championed in getting this program going here. Muslim also services in Quran classes and just babysitting. And they have various programs like Umrah packages for families with special needs. It was founded by Dr. Omar Suleiman and Sister Juhi Tahir. You can definitely donate and join as a volunteer. They have multiple opportunities out there all the time. They have peer-to-peer groups, they have support groups, whatever it is, through Mohsen. And so there's other, American Autism Association is a very good website to learn from. The CDC Autism and Mohsen. These are three of the main websites that I personally like a lot. There's definitely a lot of information out there and it can get overwhelming, but for a person who has recently diagnosed, this is a very good, these are some very good platforms to go check out. I want to start by saying one thing. In our community, it is very hard, it is very difficult to come out and talk about autism. It's highly undetected in our community, usually from back home, or people come out and say, well, it's a behavioral issue, or it's this. 9 times that I would highly recommend, you don't have to label it, you don't have to call it, but definitely get tested. Get your child tested if you find or feel like, a child is struggling. And there's there's plenty of programs out there to help our children succeed, and I think that there's a lot of pressure. Sometimes I hear, I did this talk last year at NEMCC, and this year, after doing that talk, I had quite a few people just reach out and say, well, so-and-so said, my paternal or maternal or whoever back home said, no, just read dua on them. Well, dua is one thing, yes, definitely, always do dua. But also having the right resources, making sure that they're getting tested and helped at an early age. Early detection, early intervention is key for autism and many other abilities out there. And, from personal experience, going from a nonverbal child who is nonverbal, not able to speak, anything repetitive behavior, to being able to, alhamdulillah, be, in a general education school with services is a true blessing. And it's been a 4-year journey for us so far. But, it is a very, it's very helpful to get tested early on. It makes all the world, and you have a lot of resources that a lot of people don't realize that they do. You can get tested as early as 18 months and be able to get services from the state. We have Blue Bonnets, I believe, is the state service or Austin service area. It's located in Georgetown. They are the state evaluation. They will evaluate the child and provide services. There's in-home therapy of the comfort of your home, and then there's also therapies that you can go to. There's play therapies, there's all sorts of things out there. And then there's accommodations for school-aged kids all the way till 21. You can, a lot of the times that we have trouble with test taking or being able to sit in a certain seat or getting that extra attention, those are all available for your schools. Those are things that you're able to ask for because it's available. You just have to tap into it. And so, yeah, I think, that's it. So, if anyone has questions, yes.
You said that autism is not a disease. Is it a variety of a normal behavior?
So I'm not a doctor, but I will explain from what I understand. It's a disorder from various. I wouldn't call it a disease. The reason is because there's no actual cure. And so it's just the wiring. The most simple answer that I've always been told is it's just the wiring is different. And so it's a group of disorders like communication, being able to communicate, or these series of behavioral communication and social behaviors that are wired, where these kiddos or people are wired a little differently. And so it's really just a group, it's a category, and all these subcategories fall under it. I don't know if that answers your question. So that's a very good question. And, you know, in a lot of the therapies, and I'll tell you this from personal experience, there's a level of correctiveness. Okay, communication is essential. And how we communicate is, you know, through talk and speaking and through sign language or whatever it is. And so we have to be able to correct or be able to communicate without having these, I guess, like a tantrum or whatever, you know? And so that is what that's what the correctedness is. Now, sometimes what happens is, for example, I'll take ABA, which is behavioral therapy. Now, trying to fit into the norm is sometimes what people want to do. They want their child or a person to be as normal as possible. But what is normal? There's no real definition. Like, I don't think I'm normal half the time. I'm pretty out there. So, and that's where it gets a little tricky, because that's when you have, as a caregiver or parent or whoever, draw the line and say, you know what, I really don't care if my kid is rocking back and forth. That's fine. But I do care that they're able to communicate in the world in the long run, you know, being able to have a conversation to some extent, or being able to do some basic functions in life. And so a lot of, and why it's not a disease or an illness is because these are certain things that are not, I mean, they can be learned in certain ways. There's ways that kids are able to communicate with an iPad. And sometimes they're just not able to communicate. But that's okay. They'll find, you know, they'll have various, and I can't speak for the severe cases out there, which there are. But it is not something that, it is the wiring of the brain that's, to me, an illness or a disease is something like cancer. It is just eating away, and there needs to be a treatment. It needs to be eradicated. And you can't really eradicate autism. You can treat, it's learned behavior. You can try to teach them different ways so that they can function in society. But it does become a little tricky, and it's always become a very shady, there's shades of gray, especially when it comes to certain therapies, as in how much correctiveness do we want. Yes. Not you, Nina. So yes, so there is something called ADOS testing. It is done usually at a school. You can get it done at a doctor's office, pediatrician, and even therapy centers. And what they do is, it's a series of questions. It's about, it's about an hour and a half test that they conduct, and they will ask you a series of questions. Like, okay, this baby doll is sitting here, and can you give her the bottle? And so that's how they will get along with, that's what they'll do. They'll say, like, okay, what do you do? And kind of notate there's a series, I think there's like 4 levels that you can test on. And then ultimately you get a score, and that will be the base. Yes?
So you mentioned something about special program for this Ramadan for the kids with autism. So where we can find more information about that?
So it's kids and family members with all abilities, so Down syndrome, whatever it is, which I hope we have future programs discussing as well. But it's on the ICBC website. I believe the email is like it's if you search for CHAMP, CHAMP is the program's name here. Yes.
Yeah. So how many hours does a child need per week to make sure that they can improve if for instance, they are determined to be autistic? Are there certain hours that you recommend that child to have at least per week? Because I think depending on the different therapy or different programs you go to, they might have probably 20 or 30 minutes and per week or something. And is there enough for that child to basically see some improvement?
That's a wonderful question. So first, once you get evaluated, again, this is a spectrum, so no two children are alike. And so what happens is once you initially get that diagnosis, you'll go through and answer, you'll have like a doctor, or even at school, you'll have a separate evaluation. So I should mention this, school evaluations are separate from medical evaluations. They have to, they're not based off of each other at all. The school does their own evaluation. And so the school will provide services such as occupational therapy and speech therapy, and those are usually 15 to 20 minutes a week or twice a week, depending on the child. And it's in a group setting. Privatized therapies are more to your and the doctor's recommendations. So if they see someone that's, more higher functioning, sometimes you can get away with a couple of days or a couple of hours a week of therapy versus someone that is lower functioning. They might need no school and complete days, so 8-hour days. At the very beginning, I can tell you that we used to do about 8 hours of therapy a day. And that was, ABA, speech, and occupational. And there were times that we even did 12. So but then it triggered, as things improve or go, whichever way it goes, it'll adjust accordingly. And you'll get, when you take a child or, whoever to the doctor, they will give you their recommendation, and then you check in every 6 months or year, depending on how often you need it, and they'll adjust accordingly. Because it goes through the insurance for the most part. A lot of these services are covered through insurance, partially or somewhat. So it has to have a doctor's, as far as like the privatized therapies, they need, for insurance to cover it, they need the authorization from doctors. And then that's what the insurance will coordinate and work with to get, to cover.
Can we communicate on computers?
Yes, you can. All right, okay, well, thank you for coming, everyone, and there's snacks outside. Oh, did you have a question? Oh, okay. Well, we brought some snacks outside, so I hope, you guys have a good understanding, or at least like a baseline on this.